Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Impact Grant First Quarter webinar. Thank you so much for being here today. I know we're in the middle of the day on a Thursday, and all of you are very, very busy people. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me and take in this webinar. Of course, as always, I will send a recording of this webinar out to all 63 of our Impact Grant project managers, as well as the secondary contacts. I'll also be posting it online and providing the material on the slides so you can print it out if you wanted to or anything like that. So thank you again for being here, and let's get started. So just a couple things about the webinar. I know many of you have been to a webinar before, so I'll go through this rather quickly. If you have trouble hearing me, turn up the volume on your speakers, and if at any point you get disconnected, go ahead and give our office a call or click on the email with the link that you got to get here, and you'll get right back to it. I'll click through the slides and everything. If you have a question, you can go to the chat box on your right, and I will get to those questions at the end of the presentation, or you can always email me, and I would be happy to answer anything. Today's webinar will probably last about 30 minutes at the most. I tend to talk super fast, so maybe a little bit less, but again, we'll go through all of the slides and have time for questions at the end. So let's get started. What will we discuss in this webinar? Well, here's what we're going to discuss. We're first going to discuss some strategies for recruiting volunteers because, as you know, without volunteers, your project just won't happen. And I know you all wear many hats as an Impact Grant project manager, and volunteer managing is not only very time-consuming, but it can be frustrating. So we'll discuss some hopefully helpful tips and tricks about volunteer recruitment. Next, we'll go over content in the first quarter reports, which, as you know, aren't due until April 15th, but I emailed them to you last week for your review. You'll notice, especially you veteran project managers out there, that there are a couple of new additions and updates. Speaking of reports, question 5 in the first quarter report discusses outcome indicators, which is just a fancy answer to the question, how do you know your project is making a difference? So we'll talk about outcome indicators and ways that we can measure the success of your project. We'll also touch briefly on some tools available for publicity and celebrate some early publicity successes from our 2016 Impact Grant class already. And we'll touch upon the Project Manager Toolbox and the links that are there because there are a lot of them. And I want to point out some special ones that might have gotten lost in the shuffle. All right, so let's just dive right in. Recruiting volunteers. The most successful projects are ones that have strong and varied group of volunteers to depend on. So what you see on your screen are some tips that are pretty intuitive, things you probably already know, but we'll just go through them in a little bit more detail. As you see, the picture there is of our Vero Beach, Florida, lodge number 1774 Impact Grant project, and they have a great group of volunteers there that volunteer on a regular basis, and they all pose for a photo for us. So projects like Vero Beach are using these volunteer recruitment tools to have a really strong volunteer base. And again, all of you out there who are veteran of the Impact Grant probably know these inside and out. The newbies, this might be a little bit more helpful, but spread the word. Make sure everyone knows. Put the volunteer opportunities on the Lodge bulletin board, Facebook page, and email the updates and in your regular newsletter. Contact the city and get it onto their website. Call local scholars and spread the word. Invite members who don't usually volunteer, and most importantly, keep asking. I've heard it from many volunteers with the Impact Grant that the most effective way is to personally reach out and ask someone face to face, or even through a text message or through an email. When you take the time to personally reach out to someone who you think would benefit from volunteering for the program and who'd bring something special to the table, that's when you do a better job of hooking them. So make it easy. Choose times that are convenient and keep the schedule as regular as possible. For example, if you meet every week at 7 at the lodge, people will know they can always stop by to help at that time. So don't expect too much from volunteers if someone comes. Make sure that they're welcome to stop by anytime, but don't immediately make them, think that they have to be there every single time in order to volunteer. Make sure you prepare your volunteers. Make sure they know what to expect when they come to a volunteer opportunity. Make sure they know what they need to bring, if they need to bring anything. And again, make sure you're clear as possible about when, where, and what, Involve your volunteers, ask them for input, use their skills, and most of all, trust them. And make sure you share your project successes often. People want to be involved with projects that make a difference. That's why you started your impact grant project, because you wanted to make a real difference in your community. And I think a lot of people see that, and a lot of people want to get on that bandwagon too. So make sure you share what you're doing early and often. And all those successes should be a catalyst and a motivator for anyone who'd like to volunteer. And another simple way to recruit volunteers is make it fun. I really like this quote here from Sherry in Nashua, and their Free from Hunger project. So this quote is a little bit old. Some of you might have seen it before on some of Mary Morgan's Impact Grant presentations, and I just loved it. So she says, we have cooking contests to see whose team of volunteers can serve the most dinners. The winning team receives a gift card. This is also a good way to show our members that we are grateful to them for what they're doing. So I love this idea because it's, getting a little bit of competition into a volunteer setting, and, a great way to appreciate and highlight the good work that your volunteers are doing. So I really like the idea of making volunteering as fun as possible. Obviously, the reason why anyone volunteers is to make a difference, but if you can add a little fun to it, all the better. So a great tip from Sherry. I'm sure, your Impact Grant project has other good ways to incorporate fun, even if you're not doing like a cooking project or anything like that. And right here we have a picture from Marshall, Texas, lodge number 683, and it looks like they have a lot of fun on their project as well. So one last slide about recruiting volunteers, and this just goes back to appreciating your volunteers. So, we talked about making sure you ask early and often, but once you hook those volunteers and once they participate, you want to make sure you appreciate them. So you want to thank your volunteers often. I want to encourage everyone listening to go to the volunteer section of the Impact Grant Project Manager Toolbox to find a link to 2 sample volunteer appreciation certificates. So one from the ENF and one from Grand Lodge. It's a really nice Word document that you could simply edit for your impact grant and print out and present to anyone you feel like needs to be appreciated with a certificate. So great, really easy way to appreciate your volunteers. Another thing you might want to consider is spotlighting your volunteers. So maybe adding a volunteer spotlight or new section to your newsletter or on Facebook to highlight passionate volunteers. You could write up a quick bio with a photo and consistently feature a volunteer once a month, once a quarter, kind of like an employee of the month type of thing, but instead with your volunteers. This is something we touched on before, but make sure you use and highlight volunteer skills. So obviously, if you have a cook in the group, don't have them decorating tables for an event. Make sure that they're in the kitchen doing what they love. Reach out to members that are retired teachers, for another example, for a mentoring program, or make sure you involve members that are veterans in your program for veterans. And also make sure you get your volunteers involved with planning when possible and appropriate. And if there's interest, hold volunteer events. So social events or meetups for volunteers is a great way for people to get to know each other and to add that fun to the volunteer experience. Or if you have a small group of volunteers that already do that kind of naturally, make sure everyone's invited. So if you find, 2 or 3 volunteers kind of going back to the lodge for a drink after, make sure everyone knows that they can go along too. From personal experience, I volunteer once a week at a nonprofit called Tutoring Chicago, and something I love about Tutoring Chicago is they have monthly young professional happy hours that all tutors are invited to, and it really, makes volunteering a little bit more special because I can not only volunteer that once a week, but also meet other people who have similar interests as me. So just a personal example, but so that's our three, our three really quick slides about recruiting volunteers. So once you get that volunteer base and you start your program, which all of you already have, we want to talk about the first quarter report. So kind of get into the nitty gritty of the paperwork. This might get a little bit boring. I'm so sorry, but I guess it needs to be done. And if you start your, first quarter off on a good foot, then the rest of the reports will just be a breeze. So here are the basics of our first quarter report. They are due on April 15th, like I had mentioned. And as per the impact grant assurances that the Lodge signed back in December, if an impact grant quarterly report is not submitted to the ENF in full with all receipts and bank statements, 1 month after the stated deadline, the Lodge's state sponsor will be contacted and the Lodge will be considered out of compliance until the quarterly report is received. So we take the deadlines very seriously. Obviously, as some of you know, and as I know, things come up. So always just keep me in the loop. I'm going to mention that a couple other times after this, but we take the deadline seriously. Keep it on your radar. Put it on your calendar now. I'll send a reminder email at the end of March, at the end of March, at the end of this month with the report and instructions again, and that'll go to the primary and the secondary contacts. Something really important is to make sure that the report is complete and submitted in full. So this means that all questions are answered, all bank statements and receipts are included, and that the report is signed. So everything is together in a nice little package and it's either mailed out to me or it's faxed or it's emailed. The best way for you is the best way for me. Note that this year I've included a cover sheet for bank statements and receipts by month to make the report organization a little easier and uniform. So you're going to notice, and again, veterans out there of the Impact Grant Program, you're going to notice there's a couple more pages in this report. That does not mean there's 1,000 more questions for you. It just means that there's a nice printed cover sheet for January, February, and March that you can put all of the receipts and invoices along with the bank statement behind so that, it's kind of clear what goes with what. Please make sure you read the entire front sheet of the report for directions. And this is in bold in my notes and capitalized because I need to make it clear, do not send the report in chunks. So don't email half and mail the other half. Please don't email one copy and mail another copy. Make sure that it's all coming together in one form. Just because I don't want to lose anything from you guys. There's 63 reports coming in at a time, and I don't want to miss an email or miss, a fax that has an important piece, and then I'm going to go back and hound you for it, and you'll be like, I already sent it. So make sure everything is together in one nice package. It'll just be easier on everyone, and it'll save paper and time and headache. Make sure the report is signed by at least 2 members. The primary contact and the ER required. Obviously, if the primary contact is the ER, then we ask that the treasurer sign. This is your time to brag, so tell us all about your accomplishments. This includes sending any publicity you've received, positive feedback, or survey results. For example, Phoenix Lodge number 335 sent some awesome thank you notes from program participants in our last third quarter. And Hightstown, New Jersey and Traverse City, Michigan sent paper copies of their surveys given to participants, which is fantastic to see. And it really gives us a great idea of how successful the project is, straight from the mouth of people who are helped by it. So if you have that stuff on hand, or if you're planning on doing surveys one quarter or all quarters, make sure you include those results with your report. We love to see them. Love to see those handwritten thank you notes. We feature them on Instagram. We feature them on our website. So make sure you brag about all the good things you guys are doing. On the flip side of that, don't be afraid to be honest. If the project's gotten off to a slow start, or there are a couple obstacles in your way, especially if this is your first year, let us know. If you're having trouble finding participants or volunteers, let us know. We want know all about successes and missteps because it's a part of the grant process. I'm not here keeping score on how many good things and how many bad things are on the report, if there's such a thing as a bad thing. If attendance is down or something like that in a quarter, just be honest. Perhaps it's the weather. I know there's a lot of projects out there that depend on the weather, repair projects and ramp projects and stuff like that. If you're not if one quarter you're not spending as much of the impact grant funds for whatever reason, that's okay. Just let us know why. So those are the basics, the long-worded basics of the first quarter report. Let's go on to some first quarter report do's and don'ts, and it's in a handy little chart for you here. So number one, do, please email digital photos. Printing photos is getting expensive this day and age, and we can only use and feature digital photos. So if you can, please email digital photos. Don't send printed copies just because it's kind of a hassle to print out nowadays and also expensive. So if you have some great photos and you like to email them, please do that. Another thing to do is show, don't tell. Share survey results, positive feedback, and thank yous, like I had just mentioned. It's a great illustration of what your project means to participants, and it fills us in on the progress. One of my biggest pet peeves so far regarding quarterly reports is when a lodge vaguely refers to survey results or positive feedback, but then omits to put them in the report. So make sure that if you want to mention a good good feedback that you've gotten or good survey results, make sure you include them as well. Number 3 is set outcome indicators now, which is again something we'll mention in a couple slides. But have a good understanding of what success means to your project. For example, a backpack project isn't successful just because kids who received food have a smile on their face, right? It's successful because the kids who receive that food have fewer absences, start to get better grades, have less discipline infractions, have more positive attitude at school, and begin a healthier lifestyle, etc., etc. All of those are real, lasting, positive differences Elks are making every day through an impact grant project like a backpack program. Follow any one of those stats, and that goes a long way to illustrating success. Another thing that I would definitely suggest you do is use quarterly reports as a tool to keep your project on track. These reports should be your opportunity to reflect on what's working and what is not working with the project. And so build some time in to use these reports for thoughtful reflection. I am a procrastinator, and there are many times in my life, through college and beyond, that I wait to the last minute to do things. But this is just a friendly reminder that, the quarterly reports are meant to be something that help you. They're not meant to be too much of a hassle. I understand they are a lot of work, but not too much. We hope they're helpful as well. The last thing is please, 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 please keep me in the loop. Call or email me if the report might be late. If there's a family emergency, if something happens right near the deadline, let me know. Even a quick reply to an email reminder is better than silence. Radio silence, disregarding reminder emails. If I haven't heard from you in a month, I'm going to get concerned and contact that state sponsor sooner rather than later. But if you keep me in the loop, let me know what's going on, I will definitely be able to work with you. Because like I said, I know you guys wear many hats as an impact grant project manager, and there's a lot going on. So keep me in the loop. All right, so I mentioned outcome indicators in the last 2 slides. It's something we're going to ask about. Well, if you've looked at the first quarter reports, we do ask about in question 5. So what is an outcome indicator? It's a piece of shareable data that points to a successful outcome brought on by your program for the population in need that you're serving. Or to put it simply and in less words, it's a way to show what you're doing is working. So why am I asking about this in the quarterly reports? Why are we spending time talking about it? We're doing it to save time, increase impact, and easily share successes. So if we're all on the same page about what we're looking for as far as how you illustrate success, then it'll be easier to share those successes with through Publicity and with the foundation. So what I wanted to do now is break down an impact grant project, and I would encourage you to perhaps think about doing this with your own project to kind of get your mind straight about what exactly you're doing with the time, energy, and funds that you're putting into the impact grant project. So this is a simple example of a breakdown logic model for a backpack program. So let's go through it really quickly. It's just a straight line with, we're going to start with inputs. So this is what you put into the project. You're putting in your volunteer time, you're putting in supplies, and you're putting in funds, right? So with all those materials, what are you doing? What are the Elks actively doing? Well, for a backpack project, they're packing food, they're distributing food, and maybe they're holding cooking classes. This is just an example, and not necessarily something that's actually going on with a impact grant or pointing to any project. This is just a general example. So given those inputs and those activities, what are your short-term and long-term outcomes? So short-term outcomes might be something that you can point to in each quarterly report. So you might see, thanks to the inputs and activities, that the kids getting the project are increasing their attendance. There's a decrease in discipline problems with these children, and there's an increase of awareness and healthy food options. These are things you can track using data from the school or through surveys. So these short-term outcomes might point to long-term outcomes, which are a little harder to monitor and quantify, obviously, but increase in school attendance might increase the rate of graduation among these children. Decrease in discipline problems might increase GPA down the road. Increase in awareness of healthy foods in the short term might point to participants adopting a healthy lifestyle in the long term. Obviously, don't have the capacity and the funds to track these kids from when they get a backpack from the Elks all the way until they're 25. But short-term outcomes that you can measure and quantify right now should speak to your long-term outcomes. So I would again suggest maybe writing down this timeline for your project, and it could work for any type of project, right? What are you putting in? What are you actively doing? What are you hoping to accomplish? What are those outcomes? And then what are those long-term outcomes? Two projects that I want to highlight that already do a great job of this is Fresno, California, 439, and Hilo, Hawaii, 759. So both of those projects, they're a little bit different. Fresno is the Mount Olympus Challenge, and Hilo does a gardening project for community members with diabetes. But in both of these cases, the project managers do a great job of illustrating short-term and long-term outcomes. Fresno points to increase in attendance for their participants and graduation rates. It's clear that the project is working for these kids. And Hilo does a great job through their surveys of showing attitudes towards healthy living and attitudes towards fresh vegetables as it pertains to these community members with diabetes. So in both of those cases, both of these projects do a great job of tracking that information and then presenting it as an outcome for their project. So, and then all of this is taken from Julia Kaufman at the Harvard Family Research Project, just so we know. I didn't come up with this logic model, but I think it's a great tool. So if you've, kind of digested that, I'm going a little fast, but, digesting that, what we're asking here is for your lodge to be thoughtful about how you will measure success of the project. So consider these questions as you choose your outcome indicator. Is an indicator appropriate for your project? So is it relevant? And these are kind of silly examples, but does average height matter for a food pantry project? No. Does hair color matter for a veterans project? No. So you're not going to track how many blondes walk in, how many brunettes. You're not going to track the average height of people who are coming to the food pantry because that doesn't speak to any sort of outcomes. But what you could do is survey those people who are participating in your veterans project to see, if they're learning something from your job program, for example, or if certain indicators point to them being in a more stable living situation. Or you might survey people who are using the food pantry to see if their attitudes towards fresh fruits and vegetables, have changed, or adopting a healthy lifestyle has changed. Any one of those indicators might more accurately and more relevantly point towards successes for your project. Another thing you want to consider is data available. One example of this is some schools can't provide individual grade data for children who are utilizing a backpack project, for example. So just make sure it's something that you can track or that you have access to if someone else is tracking it. Another question is, are data for the indicator currently be collected, or can cost-effective instruments for data collection be developed? And that is a mouthful, but really all that's asking is someone already doing this? If so, don't reinvent the wheel, ask them for their information. If no one's doing it, go ahead and find a way to collect it. That's not expensive. So an example of this is, if you're partnering with the Boys and Girls Club, they might already be tracking an indicator. They might already be tracking school attendance. They might already be tracking attitudes towards higher education. They might already be tracking, indicators of increased self-confidence or something like that. So just ask your partner organization if you can get in on that data. And surveys, I've mentioned them a lot, which should show that they're cost-effective ways to collect data. The best way to see how something's going is to ask, right? So it could be a easy way to collect data, and all you really have to do is put it on paper and make a couple copies. So pretty cost-effective as well. The last thing is the indicator quantitative? So what that means is obviously the difference between quantitative and qualitative is quantitative is numbers, qualitative is your feelings about it, right? So an example of this is, an open-ended survey question versus using a rating scale. We've all seen these now, especially any survey you do online or customer satisfaction survey, right? Can't really quantify if you're going to write a paragraph about how something made you feel. But if you're going to use a rating scale, 1 to 5, that's a little bit easier to quantify, because you could say, 10 people rated our project a 5, rather than, well, this person said all of this and this person said all of this, right? Not quantifiable. So some things to keep in mind when you think about choosing an outcome indicator. And again, I'm using that fancy word, but really it's just what data are you going to collect on your project to show that it's successful. And it could be 1 piece of data. It could be 4, whatever you feel is important to show that what you're doing is working. That is up to you, because it's your project, not mine. So, I say all this to say that, again, we just need to be mindful about how we're illustrating that the project is a success. That question is meant, the question 5 in the first quarter report is going to be replicated in the next 3 reports moving forward. So it's probably, it's better to start thinking about that now. In the same way, we don't, like I'd mentioned before, I don't want this to be a question that you think of as an afterthought, that you just write 2 sentences about without thinking. It should be something that you're kind of incorporating in everything you do when you're running your project. So enough about that. I'm so sorry I've been talking so much about it. Let's move on. We're going to talk a little bit about publicity, knowing your audience and getting the word out there about your awesome project. And then I'll point to some resources available for you that you can use on our website. And then we're also going to look at a couple early successes from our 2016 class. I'm really excited to share their successes, because I'm, so excited. They did a great job with the publicity already, and getting me and their community excited about their project. So some basics about publicity. Know your audience. Reach out to like-minded groups. Other fraternal groups are natural partners, so make sure other community groups like gardening clubs, church groups, and even high school service groups are aware of your project. This might not only help with recruiting volunteers, but like-minded groups like to hear about successes in their community. Go to where the people are. Hang flyers and advertise in the right places. For example, if there's a teen event, advertise on radio stations that teens listen to. Put a notice in the high school newspaper and hang flyers up where teens hang out. Just an example for teens, but the same thing could go for seniors who could use your project. Hang flyers at senior centers, get it in that bulletin and that newsletter. Make sure those like-minded groups and people you're reaching know about your project early and often. Think like your target audience. How do they spread the word? Create a Facebook event if, again, you have teens or a group of people on Facebook, and encourage people to share it, right? You want it to go viral. And then find out who else has interest in the issue. For example, if your lodge is holding an event for children with disabilities, make sure to contact and work with local groups, parents groups, school groups, group homes, and other places. So a really great example of this is actually right here on the screen, Kerrville, Texas. Number 2081, and that's Maryland right there in the middle. And a story that the lodge shared in the last quarter report is Maryland saw TaxRight, which I believe is a contracting company or a construction company. I can't recall off the top of my head, but saw one of their trucks in her community and knew that she needed help making a picnic structure for their lodge's impact grant project. And so she went and asked TaxRight if they could help, and they were excited to. So as you can see, both representatives from the Elks and TaxRight sit there in the picture with signs thanking the other side. So great community partner that Maryland got up and running just by asking. So. Another tip about publicity is to tell your story. So these are taken from the Network for Good Learning Center, and it was a list about 7 ways to improve your nonprofit storytelling. But make sure that when you tell a story in the press, or you're highlighting successes of your project at the end, make sure you turn to your volunteers, your partners, and other people to help find that story. Find something unique about your project to catch people's attention. Just the fact that it's a nice thing for the community might not be enough to kind of stand out in a newspaper. So the more you can make the reader feel like he or she is there, the better. Track one participant and tell their story, and then bring it back to how they're helped by your project. Take into account the people who are reading your article and make sure that they're engaged and engrossed in the project and the story. So draw them in. Again, find a really passionate volunteer you might want to highlight, or again, someone who is helped by the project. Tell their story, use pictures, get out there and kind of be that journalist and hunt down the story, and that'll be a great way to not only highlight the project but tell about why it's important. And then here are some tips for engaging with local media. Again, a lot of especially veteran project managers out there know this already, but develop a list of local contacts. Submit a good news release and make sure you double check spelling and grammar. Be persistent, newsworthy, and unique. And don't send media releases that could pass for advertisements. Make sure you're telling that story. Again, like we had mentioned on the last slide, pointing to specific successes. And also visit the news release generator. That is the URL. It's also in that project manager toolbox. But what I like about the news release generator is just kind of plug and chug. You plug in your info and then it comes up with it crafts like a nice professional looking news release that you can send to multiple outlets. So here are some tips about engaging your local media if you haven't already. Also loop in maybe your newsletter editor if you're not the newsletter editor already, or the publicity chair at your lodge, or anyone else who has experience. What am I trying to say? Getting things in the newspaper for your lodge, and ask them for some tips as well. All right, so we're not even finished with the first quarter, but already 2016 Impact Grant Lodges are knocking it out of the park. And I have 3 right up there on the screen that I want to highlight. 2 new lodges actually, and 1 lodge who has had the Impact Grant for a year already and is working on their 2nd year. But in all 3 of these cases, these project managers have done a great job promoting their project, engaging the audience, their audiences in their communities, and getting that hype up. So we have Trenton, New Jersey Lodge number 105, who had a fantastic article in their local paper that I'm going to bring up right now. Let's see. There, I think there it is. Ooh, there it is. All right, so as soon as Trenton got their impact grant, they put this great article in the paper talking all about what they're going to do with their Age Out Angels initiative, and then kind of explaining more about the impact grant program and the Elks. Pat actually reached out to me for a quote, which I was not only flattered by, but really I appreciated because they're also looping the foundation in and kind of talking about how hard it is to get an impact grant. Again, I've mentioned this before and I'll mention again, you guys are an elite squad, you're an elite class of Elks, and you know, you should be commended by for that in the press and in an article like this. So great job getting, you know, getting publicity right off the bat, Trenton. Excellent. Let's go to our next highlight, South Kingston, Rhode Island, number 1899. And Ken Kennerson out there in Rhode Island is doing great things with their home maintenance and repair program. And he shared with me this awesome packet of information, including this awesome article that I'll pull up right now. So what I love about this is, you know, this article is great because it's highlighting not only the project, but all that the lodge does. And Ken actually went to a town council meeting and talked all about the project for you know, important people in their community. And he put up a sign in, I believe, the town hall, kind of highlighting the program, which is great publicity and also a great way to reach those people who will use it. So I'm so impressed by Ken and South Kingston Lodge, and they did a great job. This is a fantastic article. And again, we're just starting the 2016 year, and all this information is out there for everyone in South Kingston to know. So great quotes in here. Fantastic job. All right, we have one more. I don't know if this, okay. My screen is going a little bit slow, I'm sorry. Allegheny, Pennsylvania, Lodge number 339 and their Yellow Glove project just started this year. But the project manager out there did a great job of setting up a very cool Facebook page that I would like to show you. So their Facebook page links directly to the lodge's Facebook page, and it does a great job of showing the action, showing everything that they're doing, and posting, you know, updates as they come with pictures. And I'm really impressed by the content of the Facebook page. It's easy for lodge members to kind of share on their own personal pages, and it's you know, a great go-to place to post everything that's happening. And this looks great. I love it. All right. So those are 3 early successes of great publicity that lodges are already getting for their impact grant projects. So great examples of good publicity success. All right. So we're almost done. Wow, we're 40 minutes in. Sorry about that, guys. So our Impact Grant Project Manager Toolbox, I mentioned a couple of times. I've emailed it in one of the first emails to project managers sent back in December, and it was resent in February with the link to this webinar. And so it's just a PDF that has a lot of links for specific project resources, you know, resources for projects helping veterans, backpack projects, et cetera, et cetera. We've already touched on some of the links available regarding volunteer recruitment and management and publicity, and those kind of speak to everyone's project. What also I would recommend taking a look at, there's a slide in there about taking quality photos, including a sample ENF photo release form. So we have language here that we use anytime we're taking photos at one of our events, kind of official language, letting people know that their photo might be used for publicity, so you can use that as a template for your own. SIP photo and video guidelines and a free photo editing tool link are in there as well. There's a using social media slide, including a beginner's guide and a cool infographic that explains when it's best to post on all platforms. So it kind of goes into statistics about when people look at Facebook or when people look at, Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that. It's really cool. And then I would also recommend looking at our sustainability slide. We'll talk about sustainability in perhaps the third quarter webinar, but some great tools there and articles about how to not only raise funds, but community interest in your project, especially now that the impact grant is, getting more competitive by the year, as you know, and as I've mentioned. So, thinking about sustainability as soon as possible is a good idea. So check out the Project Manager Toolbox. It has a lot of info. It might be a little overwhelming because of everything in it, but I promise you some good stuff in there. All right, so that is it. 42 minutes in, we're done discussing everything that I wanted to touch on for the first quarter. I hope you found at least one useful piece of information you can take back to your lodge and your project. If you have any questions, please contact me at any time. Email me, give me a call at that number. You can also call the Lodge Grants office, either if I'm not here or if you have a question about another grant or would like to talk to any of these lovely ladies down here, which is our SIP, call them SIPsters, our SIP staff here at lodgegrants@elks.org or at that phone number. So that's all I have for today. Thank you again for being with me. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to talking with you soon. If you have any questions, please put them in that question box on the right-hand corner, or again, email me, and I will talk to you all soon. Thanks.